Namaste, namaste, and welcome to Monday Morning Yoga. And this morning we are focused on maintaining a healthy back on our last day of this term. So because it's the summertime, there's lots of people who do an awful lot more activity actually during the summer, in general activity, but also gardening in particular. So this has come up quite often. What can I do to help keep my back feeling scrumptious after a day in the garden, or indeed a day just doing lots of walking or whatever else it might be? So there's lots of aspects to the back. There are soft tissue structures, there are joints, ligaments, and there are nerves, all of these things interplay. And often the feelings that we have across our back are associated with other tightness in the body, or other stiffness or other weakness, possibly, or rather not weakness, but a movement towards more strength. But one of the best things that you can do, particularly if your back is tired, is to allow it to have its natural shape. So often when we're sitting or standing or being in general without awareness, we tend to be a little bit slouchy and crouchy. So even just focusing on keeping length in the spine can be good. And our first practice will be centered around that. I have to my side here a lot of equipment. So we're going to use various bits and pieces today. I have a couple of brick blocks, which I'm just going to pop to one side for now, and also a soft block, a squishy ball. This is a Pilates ball. It's about half full. It could be a little less full if you don't enjoy back bending quite as much as me, and a bolster. And I'm just going to put this all to one side for now, apart from maybe this soft block, to come down to lying on the tummy. So I'm going to show you lying on the tummy. Those who are practicing together in class right now don't need to be shown, you know how to do. But I'll give you an alternative to this as well. So we want to lie flat on our bellies and make a pillow out of the hands and turn the head either to one side if it feels best for you, or if you can, just rest the forehead on the back of the hands. And if that gives space for your nose, that's great. If not, turning the head to one side. But we're trying to keep the spine as well aligned as so. Hopefully that gives us the opportunity to keep the spine straight. Oh geez, Mari's joining us a little late. She's been having trouble getting in. Super. So we're going to take this position of the body and we want to relax the legs as much as possible too, so that we find heaviness with the front of the body on the floor. So if you are not comfortable in this position and you feel a little bit bendy in your back, you can take that soft block or rolled up folded blanket and just put it underneath the front of the pelvis. And that sometimes helps if you've got bony hip bones, so that you don't feel that you're knobbling them on the floor. But also it helps to lift the pelvis a little, which flattens the natural curve in the low back. So if you find it a little bit intense with that natural curve, you can try that as an alternative. And here we're going to play with the position of our feet a little bit. So if you bring the heels of your feet together, and maybe your legs together as well, and then just allow the toes to stay where they are and the heels of the feet to separate as much as your hips will allow. And then doing that a few more times, bringing the heels of the feet together, just feeling what switches on in the body to allow that to happen, and then separating the heels. And notice what softens. And then again, bringing the heels of the feet together and allowing the heels to separate. And this time you can separate your legs a little bit further apart, but keep that sensation of the heels moving out to the sides. If you find it less comfortable to have the heels out to the sides than having them more parallel, then please adjust. just going with what works best for your body. This whole practice is an exploration of what is comfortable for you. And then allowing the upper body to be really heavy. We're trying to find the opportunity for the body to switch off some of that tension that holds us upright and find a sense of grounding through the front of the body, particularly perhaps in the tops of the feet, the fronts of the thighs, the pelvis, the belly, even the space under and across the rib cage, under the arms, parts of the body that don't generally touch the ground, so they don't have the opportunity to soften as much. So for the next few minutes, we're here on our bellies, just taking some deeper breaths. If your eyes are not closed, you might close them here. And as you breathe, you can feel the breath moving through the sides of the body and the back of the body. Perhaps you notice the low back gently expanding and rising as you breathe in. And then a sense of softening, surrendering to gravity as you breathe out. Try taking your awareness around your body and just softening any tension that you find, maybe wriggling the toes to soften the soles of the feet. Allowing the area across the forehead and around the eyes and over the jaw to release as well. Here we're trying to make ourselves as soft and heavy as we're able to do in this moment, a sense of releasing and letting go into the ground. We're going to hold here for about another 5 deep breaths. No need to count. I'll be doing that at this end. And whilst you may feel like this is not doing anything, you are in fact resting in your most natural spinal alignment, maintaining the gentle S curves of your spine, allowing all the structures of the spine to be in that natural shape, and therefore they can sort of come back to balance if they've been out of balance. So this stillness and this softness is really effective at releasing tension, especially effort tension from the back of the body. After your next exhalation, we're just going to prepare to move a little bit. So this position that we've been in, this prone lying, is really effective if your back is tired and if it's made a lot of effort. And if you find yourself feeling that way through the day or at the end of the day, give yourself a few minutes, maybe 5 or even 10 minutes, in this position, just softening and releasing down. For now, we're going to gently move from here. So we're going to bend the knees at the and just bring the feet up so that they are over the knees a little bit, or towards the buttocks a little bit. And then here, we're gently going to start with swaying the feet, from side to side. Just a gentle rock of the feet from side to side. And you can feel perhaps a gentle massaging effect across the fronts of the thighs and maybe even the low abdomen, the front of the pelvis. And when you've done a little bit side to side, we can circle the feet. Now you might like to circle the feet in the same direction, or you might like to circle them in opposite directions. It doesn't matter which of these you do, but we're going to do both. And here it helps to have just a little bit of lift in the belly muscles and the pelvic floor. And the further away from your buttocks the feet go, the more of an effect this has. So if it feels less comfortable, you might bring your feet into a smaller circle. And if it feels more comfortable, you might try to explore a deeper circle, a bigger circle. Whichever way you're going, we're going to go in the opposite direction. So it doesn't matter if you're doing both feet in the same direction or opposite directions. Swapping direction. Just having that little bit of effort through the center of the body to help here. Then when you're ready, you can come back to center and take the alternative route. So I was doing both feet in the same direction, so now I'm going to go in opposite directions. And if you were going in opposite directions, then try both feet in the same direction. And again, these circles can be bigger or smaller as you choose, using just enough effort in the center of the body to feel like you're supporting the movement. You don't need to be rigid or holding on really tight. Whenever you're ready, changing direction. Circling of the feet going the opposite way. And all the while, we're just getting this really nice, it's a fascial release across the quadriceps, muscles at the front of the thighs. You may even feel it around your knees a little bit. That can be quite nice. But also across the front of the pelvis and across the abdomen as well. And then when you're ready, you can bring your feet back to stillness and just release your feet down to the floor and take a few moments with the toes turned slightly in, the heels turned slightly out. Maybe a deep breath or two, just to feel that the legs can settle back to the mat, and notice if it feels differently across your body than it did at the beginning of the practice. And then here we're going to do just a little bit of movement in the opposite direction. So we're going to bring the hands underneath the shoulders. You can touch the forehead to the floor if it helps. And then bring yourself up to your hands and knees. And on hands and knees, we're actually going to take a moment to do cat-cow pose. So spreading the fingers out, a little lift in the belly here. And we want to press the tops of the feet down to the floor just gently, just enough to feel that we're switching on. Press the body away from the mat and then begin with just a gentle tilt of the pelvis. So bearing in mind that we've held the body in its most natural shape, but it is a gentle back bend, particularly in the low back. Moving into this movement of the spine slowly so that you can feel the effect. And then you can allow the movement to travel more through the rest of the body, perhaps encouraging movement across the upper back. And then eventually you can allow your neck to move as part of the spine as well. So we're not doing our fullest cat-cows. You can be as slow and steady as you like. We're just trying to find a little bit of movement. When your back is vocal or angry or irritated, then smaller movements will be much more helpful. And you can feel your way into what feels comfortable in that moment. And sometimes we practice our fullest range of movement so much we forget the benefits of moving in those smaller spaces. When you feel ready, you can take your knees nice and wide, maybe toes together, and just reach the hands forward a little bit and see if the hips will settle back towards the heels. Maybe your forehead might come to the floor, or you could rest on the back of your folded arms. Wherever you are, just take a moment to feel a little bit of length out of the low back. A little bit of space there, moving in the opposite direction. By taking the knees wide, we get this lengthened spine. With the knees together, we tend to round through the back. And that's okay. They're both practices that are useful in different ways. But because we have moved from a back bend, this lengthened spine is the first place to start on our journey towards curling the body in the opposite way. And you might like to gently sway your hips from side to side if it feels comfortable. And then we can come up again a little bit higher, supported by the hands, bringing the knees towards each other and just seeing if we can settle over our bent knees, maybe not the crown of the head, but the hairline rather than the forehead to the floor. And the arms relaxing back down to the ankles. If you're not comfortable in this variation of child's pose, then you can take the previous variation with the knees apart and that lengthened spine. Taking a few deeper breaths here. Moving the awareness again into the back of the body as you breathe, and noticing the spaces that the breath creates. And we get that by breathing that slightly longer, slower, deeper breath. And then when you're ready, coming into any comfortable upright position. Kneeling perhaps would be the most useful thing right now. But if you prefer to sit, then absolutely sitting. So just giving yourself a moment, maybe rolling the shoulders a little bit. If you prefer to be in a different position, taking the different position, and just noticing how your back feels in this moment. If it feels quite comfy, that's great. If it doesn't feel so comfortable, that's okay too. We just get to know our back as we go. So a lot of what we need to do to support the back is use our muscles effectively. And when a back is feeling not in its best state, muscle contraction over the back usually isn't very helpful. But we can encourage the muscles that support, like the gluteus muscles across the buttocks, the muscles in the legs and across the belly as well, to be more active in their support. And if you have your discomfort in your low back, sometimes if your upper back is more supportive, it's helpful too. So we're going to use our squashy balls to do a little bit of stabilizing of the deeper abdominal muscles. So grabbing your squashy ball and joining me on your back on the mat. So the first thing we want to do is maybe hold the ball between the thighs or the knees and just allow the back to soften here. So we don't need to squeeze the ball, we're just keeping it in place so it's handy. And we can reach the arms away from the body, just allowing the backs of the shoulders, the back of the head, and the backs of the hands to settle into the floor. And as we do that, we're taking the body again into a gentle shape that's just beyond the natural line of the spine. So here we've flattened out that natural curve in the low back. So we find ourselves in a very, very, very gentle forward bend. It's probably not so much that you would notice, but sometimes that is just enough length to create a little bit of comfort. We're going to start by just moving the pelvis here. So a little tuck under of the spine, squeezing a bit with the buttocks, and then around, letting the low back coming away from the mat a touch. So we're just rocking over, actually it's the sacrum that really is on the floor that we're rocking, or the back of the pelvis. And again, you can do this more vigorously or quickly, but if you are slow and steady, you have an opportunity to really feel your way into the effect of the practice and the sensations through the body. So just a little pelvic tipping backwards and forwards. And as with all practice, anything that releases discomfort or tension, that's great. Just make a note of it, and you've found a thing that really works for you. But anything that increases your sense of discomfort, then we want to avoid that at this moment anyway. So you can bring your back to stillness again, and then this time we're going to reach the arms over the head and just allow the arms to rest towards the floor. So if your arms don't rest towards the floor when they're right over the head like this, then you can move them out to the side until they do. And it doesn't matter if that is right down to your shoulders. Do what feels the best for your upper back here. And we want to just find a touch of extra heaviness with the back of the head, and begin by allowing the arms and the upper back and the head to find heaviness against the mat, just as they did in the previous position, so that they're softened and anchored. And then we can practice those pelvic tilts again, just a gentle rocking backwards and forwards. And all of these subtle movements have a very deep effect on our fascia, the connective tissue that is spread through the body, that connects to every soft tissue structure, every joint, every blood vessel, every nerve, every organ. And so whilst it feels like we're doing a small thing, the effects can be quite profound, and they can be throughout the body, not just in the part that we're focused on. So here, if you wish to, you might lift your hips a little bit higher, just keeping the ball in place between the legs. Maybe just hovering the hips a touch off the floor, feeling that the buttocks are switched on, but we're not really lifting into a bridge pose. It's like a baby bridge. Pressing perhaps into the heels of the feet. If you find that any movement triggers discomfort for you, then resting out of it, resting down, or going back to a previous movement that has been helpful. Let's just do one more of these. And then we're going to bring our arms back down to our sides. Just gather the ball in your hands so that you can lengthen your legs one at a time. And then from here, we can press the heels away from the body and reach the arms over the head, and maybe press the low back gently down towards the floor. Feel that stretch. And then releasing the arms back to over the chest, relax the feet. Take a little circling of the ankles if that feels good. And then we can point the toes. Reach the ball over the head again and allow the back to gently ease from the floor if that's what your body naturally does. Take a moment and then relax back to center. Arms over the chest, relaxing the legs, and maybe circling the ankles in the opposite direction. And here we're keeping the hips a little bit lubricated as well, which is nice. So we're bending the knees, placing the feet on the floor, and we're going to take those squashy balls and pop them underneath the sacrum. So it's important where the ball is placed, because it has a different emphasis depending on where it is on the back. So we want it to be directly behind the bony bits at the front of the hips, so that you might feel a little bit of the squash of the ball into the buttocks and a touch of it into the low back, but not really into those areas, more that bony bit at the back of the pelvis. Reaching the arms wide from the body, just letting the shoulders settle down. If you don't have a ball to hand, you can do all of these practices on a little cushion or a Ziploc bag full of air. Works really well. Or just on the floor. So you can join in still and maybe think about whether you might need a ball if the muscles are enjoying the practice that we do. So we want to start by having the hips heavy onto the ball, and we're just going to gently sway ourselves around. So it doesn't matter what you do here, a little gentle sway around. We're using the ball to massage, a touch into the low back, a touch across the back of the pelvis, and a little bit into the buttocks as well. So this is quite a free movement. You can be as expressive as you like if you want to move a little bit more. And if there's any areas that don't feel good as you move, try to avoid them or make note of them so that you know where not to go or what not to do for this moment for your back anyway. When you're ready, you can come back to center, just making sure that you're still feeling quite balanced on the ball. And then take your hands to the bony bits at the front of your pelvis, resting the elbows to the floor. And we're going to firm the pelvic floor. And as you rest your fingertips towards the center of the low abdomen and you firm the pelvic floor, you might be able to feel that underneath your fingers. So it's not like a rippling muscle directly under the fingers, but it's a sensation of engagement deeper in the body. So we're firming the pelvic floor here, and then with the pelvic floor firm, we're gently going to tip the tailbone down to the mat, tipping the pubic bone up towards the ceiling, and then rolling the opposite way, tipping the pubic bone down and lifting the low back away from the mat behind us. So we're tipping backwards and forwards. These are quite large movements, or as large as feels comfortable to you. But we're going to take them and make them much more subtle. So making this movement as small as you can, still engaging the pelvic floor. Perhaps nothing else is moving except that part of the body directly underneath the hands. Perhaps you can feel the muscles working much deeper inside the body. Here, we don't need to force contraction. We're just gently engaging and releasing. Trying to keep that gently active pelvic floor at the same time. You might be aware, if you move your hands around your abdomen, of muscles engaging even a little bit further up, if that's where your effort is being made. Everybody's different, so we don't have to feel this in exactly the same way. When you're ready, you can come back to center and just take a moment to sway your hips from side to side, a much bigger movement, releasing any tension from across the body. And for those of you who have felt that deeply, you might even like to release the ball out from underneath the body and bring the back to the floor and just maybe bend the knees into the chest. So it depends what feels good in this moment, but massaging out the effort that we've made in any way that feels good to you. And then if you've taken your ball out, you can place your ball back underneath the pelvis. And we'll take our hands back to those hip bones at the front of the body, gently engaging the pelvic floor. And then we're tipping the right hip up and then the left hip up. So we're swaying the hips from side to side. We're not making a huge movement, but we're perhaps moving a little bit with the knees, or perhaps it's really obvious. Maybe you feel like you're swaying your bottom from side to side. And again, we're going to make that movement much more subtle. So we're going to try and keep the knees in place. Perhaps a little press into the feet will help here. And just swaying, lifting one hip and then the other. It's almost like a twist rather than a sway from side to side. So the right hip gets light on the ball, and then it gets heavy as the left hip gets light on the ball. And we're making those movements maybe small enough that only a person really close to us would see them. But you can feel the effect much deeper in the body. Perhaps you can feel the effect in your buttocks. Who knows? Perhaps you can feel it through the low abdomen or even into some of the structures of the back itself. When you're ready, coming to stillness and just making some bigger movements, anything that feels like it's going to release. If you're quite keen on balancing on the ball, you can bring your knees in one at a time and do any sort of knee circling or swaying or tipping around in that position. And it's okay to sway off the ball a little if it feels good to you. When you're ready, you can take your feet back to the floor or put the ball back underneath the body if you've taken it out. And then we can do pelvic circling. So we're going to keep the hands onto the hips, activate the pelvic floor, and then imagining that 12 is where your nose is and 6 is between your feet. If you tip your pelvis towards 12 and then work around the face of a clock. So going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The pelvis is tipped towards the feet. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And going around again, you can mentally count to yourself if it helps, or if you're familiar with the practice, you might be able to do just a nice, smooth, circling motion. Here, we're trying to make that circle as subtle as possible. So there's no obvious sign of movement from the rest of the body. It is all happening with those deeper muscles of the pelvis. And perhaps you're the only person who can notice. When you've done 3 or maybe 4, let's do one more. Yeah, let's do one more. Then we can change direction. And on your change of direction, be very deliberate. Start at 12, go to 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. The pelvis tipped all the way to the feet. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then circling in that anti-clockwise direction, whichever anti-clockwise direction it was for you. Just really subtly, maybe 3 or 4 times, slowly enough so you can feel the effect of your practice. Don't hurry, but whenever you're finished, just releasing your weight on the ball. And from here, we're gently going to encourage the buttocks to work a little bit more. So we're going to press into the feet and rest the arms down by the side. Press into the feet, roll the shoulders back into the floor, let the back of the head be heavy, and then press into the feet as much as needed to just hover your hips off the ball. And then gently release down. So pelvic floor is still active, feet pressed down as we lift the hips up, engaging through the back of the body. Maybe the hamstrings are working, maybe the buttocks are working, and releasing down. I'm hoping the buttocks are working because that's what we're aiming for. So gently releasing up and down. Use your own rate or rhythm that feels good. Try not to let your knees separate too far. And if anything feels like it's a little bit too much for the low back, then just resting out of this, or coming all the way down to the floor if you like. For those of you who are enjoying this, we're going to bring the knees a little bit closer together and then lift the right leg up and cross the right ankle over the left thigh. So this is like a figure 4 stretch or a reverse pigeon, as we call it in yoga. And we're going to do the same bridging pose, this sort of almost hover perhaps, but in this position. So pressing into the heel of the left foot, we're going to lift the hips just off the ball or releasing the weight enough that the ball expands underneath you and then gently releasing down. So we're really focused on pressing the left heel into the floor, firming the pelvic floor just a touch, lifting up as much as that left side allows without really taking the most massive of bridge poses. And it might be that you're just a little lighter on the ball, that's okay. Let's do one more, that's 3 on this side. And then we're going to swap sides. So we swap sides by lengthening the right leg up first and taking that foot down to the floor so that the leg realigns in the hip, and then lifting the left leg up, bending at the knee, crossing the left ankle over the right thigh. We're going to just stabilize ourselves on the ball first, firm the pelvic floor, press into that right foot and heel, and see if we can lift the hips up a little and lower down. So 2 more like this, gently pressing into that right side, lifting up a little and lowering down. And we'll do 1 more like this. Very good. And then straightening the left leg up and placing the left foot down. We're going to take our feet nice and wide and sway the hips from side to side. So we get a nice massaging effect again, but perhaps a little bit more massaging. And then the other thing that we can do is take the ball and take it just a little bit lower down and then do that same thing again. So actually what you're massaging into is the buttocks themselves rather than the low back. If that doesn't feel good to you, come all the way down to the floor. It's not a problem. We're all on our way there anyway. And so when you're ready, lifting the hips enough to release the ball and allow the back of your pelvis to land on the floor and feel the effect of your practice. So you can relax your arms. If you wish to, you can extend your legs. But if you can, just keep this bent knee position for a little longer so that you can really allow the back of the pelvis to settle heavy. Now, where we've had contact with our support underneath the body might feel that delicious combination of warm and cold, or warm and tingly, which is quite nice. And then when you're ready, you can lengthen your legs and just allow a little roll through the hips, maybe a circle of the ankles, which would be quite nice as well. Aces. And then we're going to bend our knees into our chest, just catching hold of one knee and then the other. And you don't need to bring your knees really deeply towards you. We just want to take this more subtle position and maybe circle the knees in the same direction. Now here I'm going to start with my knees together. A nice gentle massaging of that lowest part of the spine against the floor. And then the opposite way as well. There are no prizes for doing big circles. Circles nice and small so we can contain that place that we're focused on more towards the center of the spine or the center of the back of the pelvis. And then when you're ready, you can take your knees a little bit further apart. Same thing. So these circles perhaps are a little bigger. and you feel the effect more across different parts of the body. When you're ready, you can circle in the opposite direction as well. I found a creaky floorboard. And then coming back to stillness, we're going to separate the knees further still. And here you can circle the knees in the same direction a few times. If you feel any discomfort from doing this, then you can bring the knees back towards each other. It's not a problem. But once we go in the other direction as well, which we're changing direction just now, then we can, with the knees very separate, come back to center and then just circle in opposite directions. So a little rocking and rolling. And here, of course, our primary focus is really on the hip joint. So just moving the legs in the hips in that massaging, lubricating fashion, and the opposite way too. And tight hips is a phrase we hear a lot in yoga. It means different things to different people. Most of us, our hips move in all sorts of different directions, but we often have one direction that is less flexible than others. But this helps to alleviate, but tight hips can be responsible for problems with the back of the body. So bringing the knees back to center, we're going to take the feet down to the floor, just one at a time. And then take your feet nice and wide, firm up the belly, and just gently sway the knees from side to side. Again, if this particular motion doesn't suit you very well, just resting and joining in with the next thing, or making a much more subtle motion until it feels comfortable. So it might be that you start really small and work into a larger practice or a larger movement. Once we've done a few of these lovely twists with the knees nice and far apart, our windscreen wiper knees, where one goes forward and one goes to the side, then we can come back to the center and then bring the knees a little bit closer together, so more sort of hip width apart perhaps. And again, you can allow the knees to go from side to side. Feels a little bit differently down the sides of the body, so a gentle effort across the belly muscles here and the pelvic floor just to help control. We want control all of the time, of course, but here to help control the knees. And then we're going to come back to center and bring the knees all the way together, the feet together as well, and really good control across the center, allowing the knees to sway to one side and then the other. The opposite foot comes off the floor, so the knees and the thighs can stay together as you move. And this is the most twisty twist of the ones that we've done. It's not really, it's just a different kind of twist. But if this one irritates, then resting out of it or going back to one of the previous options. Let's do one more to each side. We're not trying to get anywhere here. We're still just doing entry positions. Then when you're ready, coming back to center, we're going to stretch the legs for a moment and just release. Oh, it feels so good to lengthen the legs after all that practice, circling in the ankles and going the other way as well. Very good. So there are a couple of things I'd really like to do here on the back, but I want us to do a bit more practice on the front of the body first. So we're going to roll over. And so if you shift yourself to one side of your mat, so I've shifted to the left, I'm going to lengthen my right arm and leg and then just roll onto my tummy again. As I come onto the tummy, making a pillow out of the hands, turning the toes in and the heels out, and taking a few deep breaths here.
allowing the front of the body now to feel heavy and grounded, and freeing up the space in the back of the body to breathe into with those deep breaths. Softening the features of the face, and here we can give ourselves the opportunity to really release the effort of holding across the belly muscles and the pelvic floor. So we can soften there, and soften in the buttocks, soften in the backs of the knees and the soles of the feet. And then when you're ready, we're going to bring the legs a little bit closer together, so that the feet are more parallel. And then reach the arms out in front of you. Maybe take your forehead to the floor if it feels comfortable to do that. We're going to try reaching the left hand and the right leg away from each other. So stretching on the floor, diagonally across the body, and then relax. Reach the right hand and the left leg away from each other, stretching along the floor, and relax. Well, as we continue to do this, I want you to engage your pelvic floor, engage your belly muscles, and think about gently pressing the pubic bone a little bit towards the mat to create space across the low back. So reaching opposite hand and leg away from each other, left hand, right foot, if that feels good, and release. Reaching right hand and left foot on the floor away from each other, and release. Let's do one more to each side. Reaching away, creating space, creating length, and release. Reaching away, creating space and length, and release. We're going to come back to center, re-establish the pelvic floor and the belly muscles, and just gently tipping the pubic bone down. And then this time we're reaching the left hand and leg away from each other. And if it feels comfortable, you can gently lift them. And as you lift them, you can lift your head away from the floor if that feels like the right thing to do. You can keep it down if you prefer, no problem. And then lower down. And then we're going to reach the right arm and left foot away from each other. Nice and firm in the center. If it feels good, you can lift and lower. There are no prizes for lifting high. Here, we're going from side to side, keeping that centered control, lifting just a little, and releasing down. If you have tension in your back that is from overuse, then you might find that this irritates it. That's okay. Just resting out of this, or keeping the arm and leg down on the floor and doing the lengthening part of the practice is really useful to do that. So the lifting part of the practice is about strengthening and supporting, but the lengthening part of the practice is about finding space. Let's do one more to each side. This is a variation of the locust pose, but I just call it swimming. When you're ready, you can make a pillow out of your hands, turn your toes in, heels out, and just sway the hips gently from side to side. Soften all the effort across the pelvic floor and the belly muscles that we've made. Maybe just feel like you're opening some of the spaces across the front of the body, back of the body as you breathe. If at any stage you feel inclined to sigh out through your mouth, that's great. That just helps us to create an energy of releasing. And then from here, we're going to take the hands underneath the shoulders, press back onto hands and knees, and we want to grab our bolsters in better hand. So if you don't have a bolster, you can still do this practice as a normal child's pose. It's not a problem at all. But if you do have a bolster, awesome. So bolsters here, we're going to have the knees quite wide and place the bolster between the knees. So when we come to child's pose,
We've got the whole of the upper body from the head all the way down to wherever the bolster finishes for you. So me, it's just around about the bottom of the abdomen. And then we want to relax here for a few deep breaths. So if you feel that this is not high enough for you, you can always put a couple of blocks underneath your bolster to make it a little bit higher for you. You can take a normal child's pose, or you can simply be upright in a kneeling position as an alternative. Allow the arms to drape towards the floor. We have to turn our heads to one side here, so we're going to do about 5 breaths here and then swap sides with the head. Soften the belly muscles, relax the effort in the body. Feel a sense of length perhaps around about the low back or the back of the hips. When you're ready, you can gently turn your head to the other side. If it doesn't feel as comfortable, but it's comfortable enough, that's fine. If it doesn't feel comfortable and it becomes uncomfortable to the point of pain, then turning your head the opposite way again. Just resting here, softening the forehead as well. For another few deep breaths. When you're ready, we're going to come back onto our heels or hands and knees, as you choose. We're going to take our bolsters. We want the stuffing in the bolster to be nice and even. So if you normally hold it with one end and it all travels to the other end, then maybe just easing it out again. So I'm going to take my block and put it underneath my left knee, and then kneeling up, step forward with the right foot, so that I come into this lunge position. Now, if you want to, you can have your other blocks to hand, just in case you want to use them. But we're going to try a yin version of this. So I will give you 2 different versions. We're going to come forward to the point where we can rest the back thigh on the bolster. Now, that's fair enough if there's enough room to do that. But if there isn't, that's okay just to hold yourself a little higher, and you can always use the blocks for support. So we're just going to ease the hips forward a little bit, a little lift in the belly muscles, using the blocks underneath the hands if it's comfortable to do that. And just see if by making contact with the front of the thigh on the bolster here, we can get a sense of letting go. So if you don't want to come so deep into the lunge, if you move the bolster back towards your back knee, then you'll be higher up by the time your thigh hits that bolster. And that's all good too. And again, if you need to lift the bolster, just as I suggested in the previous practice, you can place things underneath it to make it a higher thing to hold, thing to support. So here we're trying to create a little bit of length down the front of the hip flexor on this left-hand side, taking a couple of deep breaths. We're not without effort here, but we want to be with minimum effort. And then when you're ready, we're gently going to ease the opposite way. So we don't necessarily want to drop the hips all the way to the heel, but just ease the opposite way slightly, and then be a little bit more dynamic, bringing the hips forward and backwards. Just a little movement. It's not the full range of movement. It's just that sense of lubricating, easing, moving within the easy range of movement. And that front knee doesn't need to straighten. It's great if it does. It doesn't need to straighten at all. You might play with having the toes down on the right foot at the front, or the toes lifted, as the case may be. Just a little backwards and forwards. Maybe releasing back one last time for a wiggle from side to side. Scooping the belly muscles in, using the blocks for support. You don't have to be as deep in this as you can. It's finding that nice space to work in. And then when you're ready, you can bring yourself to an upright position and swap. Oh, she says, just kicked over my bolsters, blocks rather. So block or support underneath the right knee if it's needed, and stepping the left foot forward. And you can play with where the bolster needs to be for you. So it might be that you want to come a little bit deeper into this and have the left thigh resting a little bit closer towards the floor. If that feels like it's too stretchy or it's too much, or if it irritates the back, which we're trying to avoid, then you can roll that bolster back towards your back knee so that you're a little bit higher up, but you still get that sense of contact. And it's the sense of contact and grounding that allows us to release tension. So that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to get into a stretch to the nth degree. We're just trying to find a place where we can release tension. So we're a little bit supported here in the back leg. Hopefully that means that we can release into the hip flexor of that right thigh. Hands can be supporting on the block if you wish. You can be a little bit further forward if it feels better for your back. So you don't need to be upright as well if that creates effort in your back bend. Being a little bit further forward is fine too. And here we're just taking a few deep breaths. We can play around with our position until it's comfortable and then try to settle there and hold with a minimum of effort. So here we don't need to have the buttocks switched on or any of that jazz. You might have a touch of lift across your belly muscles, maybe just the subtlest of engagement. If you feel that it doesn't benefit you, then don't need it. Let's take a few more deep breaths. And then we're going to just gently ease back. So we take the hips back a little. Again, it doesn't need to be as far as they normally go. And we'll work coming forwards and backwards. Just moving a little bit through the sensation of lengthening the front leg, maybe the hamstring, maybe keeping the toes down a little or the toes up a little, as the case may be. Trying to find that easy place of movement. It's not the full range of movement, but it is feeling good in the body. Next time your hips come back, maybe give them a little wiggle from side to side, particularly if you find that useful. And then we're going to come up into an upright lunge and just step that left leg back. You don't have to come out of it that way. If you can find a way that works better for you, then go for it. Please excuse me while I just adjust the hair out of the way. It's all a bit kerfuffled. So we're going to now come back to our child's pose to do a little twisted child's pose. So I'm getting rid of my soft block and my two blocks. And I'm going to move my bolster forward towards the front of the mat. And then take that wide knee position again and reach the hands forward to rest the arms on the bolster. So I'm almost suspended. It's a little bit like a downward facing dog feeling with the body from the base of the spine towards the crown of the head. So I've got my head between my upper arms. It's not resting down. And here you can maybe just give your hips a little sway or your chest a little sway to see if you can find a deeper sense of spaciousness or release if there needs to be a release. And then in the center, we're going to leave the left hand where it is and just take the back of the right hand to the floor and slide the right hand underneath the body and take the right side of the head towards the floor if that's possible. So if it's not possible, you might want to put something underneath your head, a little cushion or a little block. We've got plenty of those to hand. And then in this twisted child's pose, revolving child's pose, twisted child sounds all kinds of wrong, doesn't it? So in this revolving child's pose, we want to soften our effort towards the floor, release in the belly muscles, just taking some long, deep breaths. Maybe soften through the face, through the palms of the hands. And then after your next exhalation, just gently engaging to bring yourself back to center and taking again that both arms over the bolster, slightly suspended upper body position, wiggling the hips if the hips need a bit of wiggling, or swaying the chest from side to side if that feels good. And then when you're ready, you can slide the back of the left hand underneath the right arm, taking the left shoulder and the left side of the head towards the floor, or some kind of support. Don't leave your head hanging in space here. We want to be able to let go of effort across the upper back that might hold the head in position. And then when you get where you want to go, soften the effort across your face, across your hands, your body, and breathe deeply. When you're ready, you can gently engage enough to bring yourself back to center, resting both arms on the bolster just for a final. You might even pulse your chest towards the floor to create a little bit of length underneath the body, maybe even take the underneath the arms, sorry, maybe even take the forehead to the floor and rest here. If it's not comfortable to do that, you can bring the knees a little bit closer together and just rest your body across your thighs and keep your head off the floor unless it comfortably gets to the floor, if that makes sense. Then we're going to press the bolster away from us, take the hands onto the mat, come onto hands and knees, and we're going to take a little downward dog here, but we're going to keep the knees super, super soft. So knees come off the mat, but stay nice and bent as the hips come up, pressing into the fingertips as well as the heels of the hands. And we're starting with bent legs and just giving the hips a little sway from side to side, maybe turning the head from side to side if it feels comfortable. And then when you're ready, you can ease one heel and then the other to the floor. So we can make our dog a little bit wider, which is a little bit, there's less chance of getting the heels down if the feet are further away from the hands, but that's okay. That is okay. So we're just softening and easing here, still having that sense of pressing the chest towards the thighs, still lifting in the belly muscles and the tailbone. When you're ready, you can take your feet quite far apart and do the same thing. So this time you bend one knee and then the other, you get more of a sway of the hips. You might like to look underneath the body with the head, so you turn in the head as well. Or you might prefer to keep more stillness or keep your sway a little less obvious, so making the movement more subtle in the center.
When you're ready, you can come up onto both tiptoes and take the heels down to the right. Keep the hands in place and just gently bend and stretch the legs. Again, doing as much as feels comfortable to you. So it might be that you want to do a little less bending and stretching, but just enjoy that side bend. And then bringing the heels back to the center. In the center, making sure you feel centered, and then tipping the heels to the left and doing that bend and stretch. Interestingly enough, I feel a much stronger stretch on the right side than, on the left side than on the right side. So make note of those things as you practice. When you're ready, coming back to the center, we've been up here for quite a long time. We're going to rest the knees down to the mat. And here we want to find our way onto our backs again. So I'm just going to push the bolster out of my way, come down onto my belly, reach the right arm and leg away and just roll onto the back of the body. And then on the back of the body, feet on the floor, just finding that constructive rest, arms relaxed down by the sides. Oh, it'll feel quite nice to relax in the shoulders after that downward dog. And take a moment just to arrive here. Let the back of the head be really heavy. Few deep breaths. When you're ready, we're going to do a little somatic practice. So we've done this several times before. I want to try this before our final practice of the day. So we're going to lengthen the left leg, but leave the right foot on the floor with the knee bent. And arms can be wherever is helpful. So just relaxing out to the side. We want to make as much of the body soft and heavy as possible here. So we're trying to release the effort from the upper back, the back of the neck, and the whole of the left side of the body. And then we're going to press into the right foot and lift the right hip off the floor as we press the right knee forward towards the feet. And it just creates this sort of slight twisting lift. We're quite firm in that right buttock, and then very gently release back down to the mat. So the idea here is that the right knee moves forward as if you're trying to press the knee towards the right toes, and that has the effect of lifting the right hip away from the mat and creating this space underneath the right side of the body, and then we gently roll back down again. So we're going to do two more like that, pressing the right knee away, feeling this lift, slowly up, and then slowly releasing down as well. Like a half bridge pose. As the sensation in the body is a bit like a bridge pose, but with this also twist through the pelvis. Again, if this doesn't feel good to you, just rest out of this practice. Maybe do a little twisting. So we're going to try this where we press up and hold, and then we're going to slump back. So if it's felt good so far, it's all good. We're going to press through that foot, lift the right hip up, think about moving the knee towards the feet, hold here for a moment, and then relax all at once. Nice. Let's do that two more times. Press the right knee towards the foot of the mat, hold, and then release all at once. One more time. Press, hold, and release. Lengthen your right leg. Take a moment with both legs long, maybe do some ankle circling, releasing in the back of the right leg itself. That's quite a nice one for the hamstrings as well, quite strengthening for them. Or it is for me, because my buttocks don't work as well as they ought to. And then we can do the other side. So we're going to start with both knees bent and the feet on the floor. Re-establish a nice pelvis, maybe give your hips a little side-to-side movements. And then lengthen the right leg away. Relax the upper body. Press into the left heel. Imagine you're trying to press your left knee towards your left toes, firming that space underneath the left side of the body as you slowly curl away from the mat and then curl back down again. So nice and controlled for our first few rounds. Pressing into the left foot, pressing the left knee away right towards the end of the mat, feeling that scoop underneath the left side of the body, and then slowly releasing down. This is one that it either irritates or it doesn't. So for me, I find it quite nice to do this. We're going to do 2 more like this, nice and slow. But I understand how it might not feel so good to some folks. 1 more of these with a nice slow release up, thinking about pressing the knee towards the foot end of the mat and release. And then we're going to do 3 where we release all at once. So pressing into the left foot, maybe just squeezing a little bit in the buttock there, lifting and holding, and then relax all in one go. Pressing into the left foot, pressing the knee towards the end of the mat, holding and release. It's a nice sort of little rebound there. Pressing and holding and release. And then you can lengthen your left leg as well, make some ankle circles, maybe a little swaying of the feet from side to side, whatever feels good in this moment. We're going to bend the knees into the chest just a little. Do any movements that feel good. So a little massage of the low back can be quite useful here. And then we'll take the left foot to the floor, cross the right ankle over the left thigh. So here we're back into our figure 4 stretch, but we're not on the ball anymore. And we're going to do a gentle twist in this position. So we're going to leave the left foot on the floor, firm the belly muscles, and just sway the left knee to the left and back to center. We're not trying to get all the way into a twist in these first few movements. We're just controlling our way to see what feels comfortable. Firm in the belly, just a little sway to the left and return. And then you can begin to see if you can find your way towards the floor, or you might use one of your handy blocks or bolster underneath the left thigh just to support it, so that when you reach over to that left side, you've found a stable place to stop and rest, which is what we're going to do now. So once you're in that stable place, and hopefully it feels quite nice and delicious down the right side of the body, we can reach the right arm out to the right, or even up to that space alongside the head, as long as the right elbow and wrist and shoulder are feeling supported. And then choose to turn your head in any direction you like, wherever it feels most comfortable, and take a couple of deep breaths. And then when you're ready, you can bring your right arm back to your right side, firm the belly, and bring yourself back to center. And we're going to, just before we release, just gently bend the left knee into the chest. You don't need to hug around the thigh. I'd like you to just use your arms for a little bit of support to ease the knees from side to side. So it's not a held stretch, it's a gentle wriggle. When you're ready, you can let the left knee come down, straighten the right leg up towards the ceiling, a couple of ankle circles just to release there, and place the right foot down. We'll do the same thing to the other side, just noticing the difference between the 2 sides. Lifting the left leg up, crossing the left ankle over the right thigh, arms out to the side, a touch of lift across the belly muscles, and just easing the right knee out to the right side, keeping the right foot on the floor. So if you are familiar with pigeon pose, this is a reclining pigeon, but we're also making a little twist with it. And it's a really nice alternative to doing pigeon pose on the floor in the usual fashion. We can ease our way into that twist, maybe seeing if we can find a place to rest. That might be with a block underneath the right thigh, so that wherever you are, you feel that you've settled and landed and can ground. Or you might be able to come to the floor in a way that feels comfortable. Wherever you get to, just relaxing, softening the shoulders down, relaxing the effort, turning your head whichever way feels comfortable for a few deep breaths. You might like to reach the left arm out to the left side or over the head, as long as the left elbow and shoulder remain on the floor. When you're ready, you can bring your arm back down to your side, a little firmness across the belly to bring the knees back towards center. And then we're going to bend the knees into the chest, just supporting them where they are in that figure four stretch for a gentle rock from side to side. If that doesn't feel good, of course, you can just simply hold them towards you. And then when you're ready, releasing the right foot down, left leg up into the air, rolling the ankle a few times, and then releasing the left foot to the floor. Just becoming aware of the difference between the two sides or the effect of your practice, and then releasing your legs long so that you find yourself in Shavasana. Now we are going to move into relaxation from here, but take a moment just to feel the heaviness of the body on the floor and the effect of your practice. And then when you're ready, you might like to roll to one side or bend your knees into your chest and release your back if you need to. But roll to one side and gather the things you need for a relaxation. So if you like, you can do a bit of legs up the wall here for relaxation, for those who find that useful. Or you might like to use your bolster or some blocks or pillows underneath the backs of the legs so that you can give the low back a moment to settle to the floor. Because we have moved a little bit less than we normally move, you might be feeling cool, so grabbing your extra layers. And whilst yoga is cleansing by fire, I'm fond of saying that often, it is also nice to do practice that is cooling and relaxing as well. And sometimes a cooling practice is quite beneficial to young ladies of a certain age. That's all I'm going to say about that. So, settling yourself down for your relaxation. Once you get into the position that feels like the right position for you, then taking a moment just to arrive on the mat. And we're going to do a gentle stretch and relax of the body. So if your legs up the wall, just join in with what feels natural to do in that position. But if you're lying on the floor, then stretching both legs away from you, really pointing through the toes, maybe even if you're on the bolster, that's all you need to do. If you want to, you can lift one leg off the bolster or the floor and then the other, and then holding, pointing the toes and relax and drop down. Squeeze your buttocks and lift the hips up a little, stretching the front of the pelvis, and relax and drop down. Draw the shoulder blades towards you underneath the body, lifting your chest up. Oh, and relax and drop down. Make tight fists out of the hands and lift your arms off the mat. Shrug your shoulders up towards your ears and then press them down towards your hips. Lengthen the fingertips wide and relax and drop down. Think about pressing your low back down into the mat and at the same time lengthening the back of the neck. The whole spine eased towards the floor. Holding as you breathe. And relax. Screw all the muscles of your face in towards your nose. Make a tight lemon sucking face. Then eyes open, mouth open, tongue out, exhale. And relax. Close your eyes. And gently roll your head from one side to the other, a couple of times in each direction, easing tension out of the neck and shoulders. When you feel ready, bringing yourself back to center, making any adjustments now before you bring your body to quietness and stillness. So take a deep breath in, sigh out through the mouth. And just repeat one more time with deep breath in and then the most gentle of sighs, surrendering your weight down into your mat. Allow your breath to fall back into its natural rhythm, falling into quietness. Bring your awareness into your forehead, feel it soften and spread. Feel the area around your eyes relaxing. Your mouth, tongue, and jaw releasing. Take your awareness into the back of your body. Become aware of all of the parts of the back of the body that have contact with your mat or the bolster and wall. Feel the back of the head, the shoulders, shoulder blades, backs of the arms and hands, the buttocks, parts of the legs, the heels of the feet. Experience the sensation of contact between your body and the floor. Move your awareness to all of the parts of the back of the body that are not in contact with the floor. The back of the neck, the wrists, perhaps parts of the backs of the legs, the Achilles, and the soles of your feet. Experience the sensation of space between your body and the floor. Allow all of those spacious parts to feel a buoyant cushion of air beneath them, and allow the whole of the back of the body to rest down into the support. Move your awareness into the front of your body. Feel space over you and around you. Feel the weight and the warmth of the blanket over you. Feel your body moving into that space as you breathe gently, deeply, slowly, softening a little deeper, surrendering a little more, relaxing down with every exhalation. Gently begin to deepen your breath and move your awareness back into your hands and your feet by wiggling fingers and toes, maybe rolling wrists and ankles. When you feel ready, taking a deep breath in and stretching the body in any way that feels good. Maybe stretching the hips off the floor, maybe gently leaning to one side and then the other, maybe yawning. Keep doing whatever feels good, and if what feels good is bending your knees into your chest, then that's great. Hug them towards you. Make any movements that feel right for your body, maybe a bit of rocking and rolling or twisting, whatever it might be. When you feel ready, you might find your way onto your side. Just take a moment to curl up on your side, letting the body come round a little at a time. When you're ready, coming into any comfortable upright position. And as you come to upright, perhaps today, palming the eyes would be the best plan. So I like to do this by clapping my hands twice first, and then rubbing as vigorously as you can. Pressing into the hand, rubbing fast, creating lots of heat with the hands.
And when the hands feel warm, which might be a little bit longer, when they feel warm, placing the hands over the eyes. So the palms themselves stand a little proud of the eyelids, but create the warm, dark place, perfect for blinking the eyes open when you're ready, releasing your hands down. Thank you for joining in this practice today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope that you feel the ease through the back of the body as you travel through your week. There are lots of short videos about the back and little practices to be done. I will record another one today, and with some of the bits that we didn't quite get time for in this session. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Namaste.